Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining again for this is our fourth session in this series, and really looking forward to showing you a couple new things this time. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to view the previous sessions in the YouTube station. I noticed there's been a lot of views of the ones that I posted out there. So thank you for that. If you do have any issues accessing that or anything, let me know, and I'll make sure that you have the right link. But so far, I think everybody's indicating that they're doing pretty well with that. So as usual, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. We've got an hour, and it always seems to go way too fast. So I'm going to start out by, we're going to do the same thing we've done all along. We're going to work with two images. And just as in previous sessions, everybody on the call is muted, and we won't have any discussion or questions live. But if you have questions as I go through the things we covered today, or as you look at the webinar recording later, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, ask me your questions. And as usual, I'll get the recording of today's session posted sometime tomorrow afternoon. Usually I get it up about 24 hours after we finished. So anyway, here we go. Let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to go ahead and open up my photos here and go out to the folder that I've set up for us. And let's see, that one is right there. So we're going to work with two images today. The first one, open this up. This first one is an image. This is actually my mom and dad. That's Bob and Shirley. And my dad broke his hip it's been 3-4 years ago now, and he was in the rehab center when his birthday came around in June, and so the whole family ended up going in, and this was his birthday celebration. So I just love the picture. It really shows me, a lot about my parents, and it's not the greatest photograph. If you look closely, if I expand it, you can see it's kind of grainy and it's not real good resolution. This was several years ago. It was probably taken with the iPhone 5. And also, I was sitting at the opposite end of a long table, and I couldn't really easily get close. So I did that kind of cardinal sin with my camera. I zoomed it in by pinching my fingers. Usually zooming in on a scene like that, it does exactly what you see here. You see the grain and so on. You don't get a very good quality image. But I love what was going on in the intimacy of it and the joy that they're able to express, even in what is really kind of not a great situation. And so I wanted to work this image up. So the first thing I did with it, again, just like every image that I've done, I started out in Snapseed. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to tap on the image. I'm going to click on my share icon. I'm going to copy the image, and this is that technique of copying the image and then pasting it into Snapseed. So I'm going to hit the home button. I'm going to come back here to my main screen and just swipe my finger down to reveal the search cell up here. But I don't really need to use the search because down here I just used Snapseed not long ago, and it's in my tray here. So I'm going to tap on Snapseed, and it brings me in. Actually, I must have had this image open recently, so I want to open. I'm going to click the open button up here, and I'm going to paste in the image that we copied, and there it is. And that was the same. That was the same image I was working on a minute ago in getting prepared. I just want to check one thing here. If you'll bear with me just a second. I just had a horrible thought that I might not have clicked the record button. No, I did. Okay. Just wanted to make sure because it's okay. So we are recording. I just wanted to be sure. So now here we are. We are in Snapseed, and again, the first thing I do with any image is go around the perimeter of it and say, okay, what do I need to fix? Well, there's a lot to fix in this image. I got this junk over here on the right behind my mother's or chair or something. There's this plaque on the wall up here behind both of them. Over here on the right, there's some things on a shelf over here, and then the foreground is cluttered with I don't know, stuff, birthday gifts, and other things. So I want to get rid of a lot of that. Well, the best way to do that in this particular case is going to be to crop the image. I could try to use the healing tools to clone this stuff out, but it's going to be really messy, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on my pencil, and I'm going to go into crop tool. And once in there, I want to show you when it comes in. The standard format for our images taken with the iPhone camera is 4/3, the 4:3 ratio. So I'm tapping on this icon down here at the bottom to reveal all of these different crop icons. And again, I know this is a review, but I'm going to take you into a little bit different territory today. So the first thing I want to do is try and figure out a way to crop this, and if I can stay within a standard aspect ratio, that's great. If I can't, we'll try something different. So if I look here, I want to try and crop out the stuff at the top and the stuff at the bottom. So maybe one of these narrower aspect ratios, a 7:5 or a 16:9, might work. I think 16:9 is going to be too narrow, but I'm going to try it. So I'll tap on 16:9, and there's our crop, and there's just really not much of a way to get what we want. I still have this over here, and because we're using a standard aspect ratio, any movement from any corner is going to change both the height and the width. So if I try to come in over here, it makes the image shorter as well as narrower. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to tap on my icon down here to reveal our different options again. And so let's try 7:5. Well, so here's a 7:5 aspect ratio. It's getting us a little closer, but I can't quite crop it the way I want it and get everything to work. So this is a case where if I go back to our options here, these are all the standard ratios, and none of them are really going to work for us. So what I want to do in this case is use the free crop. So when I tap on the free crop, what this is allowing us to do, you can actually move narrower or shorter, but you can all of the aspect ratio options. So if we go back to one of those, let's just go back to 4/3. Any movement I make is an adjustment of both the height and the width. I can't really do them independent of each other. So in order to do an independent type of crop, I have to go to free crop. So over here on free crop, now I can begin to bring this up where I want it and bring this in where I want it. Now the only disadvantage really to doing a free crop is that if you want to frame this thing, you're going to have a custom frame, because you're not going to be able to go to an art supply place and buy a standard size mat and a standard size frame like a 5x7 or an 8x10. If it's free cropped like this and you try and frame it, you're going to need to do a custom framing. So that's why I always try to do the standard aspect ratio if I can, but when I can't and I need to do something different, free crop is the way to go. So I'm going to begin to drag this up. Now, I love my mother's hand in there, but because of all this stuff over here, I'm not going to be able to keep it in the image. So I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to crop it out. Make sure I get all of it out, but I'm going to get as close to that as I can because I want to keep as much of her body in the image as I can, but I don't want to keep any of it in, any of her hand. So now the other part of it is I want to get rid of this up here, and I can begin to slide down from the top with my finger, and I'm going to take this down to where I'm just getting rid of this, but I'm still keeping some space above my father's head here. Now, if you notice where this is our rule of thirds guidelines that are here, and I don't always follow these, but I think they're good rule of thumb guidelines. My father is the subject of this image, and he is in the perfect spot on our frame. So that looks pretty good there. Now, what we've got going over here with my mother over here, we've got this piece of the chair back here, and I really don't want that in the image. If I could try and clone it out using the brush, and that might work, but I'm going to try something different. I'm simply going to do a radical crop here, and I'm going to come in pretty tight. Now, what I've done here, I've kept the pockets of her shirt as much as I can, even though typically when you're cropping, you want to avoid cropping off people's arms and limbs because it usually makes people very uncomfortable. But in this case, I think I'm okay because um, I think I'm okay because the, the the way the image is starting to form up, she is a supporting character in the frame here, and I don't think I'm okay with that kind of crop. So there's our crop. I think it looks pretty good just the way it is. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to tap the check mark, and there's our new crop. Now I notice down here I left a little bit in this corner, which I should have probably taken out, and I see a little white speck from my dad's jacket that's showing right here. So I'm going to go back into the crop and make an adjustment. So to do that, I'm going to go back up here to our stacks, tap on the stacks. I'm going to go here to view the edits that we just did, and you can see here's our crop stack that we just did. So I'm going to tap on this little arrow under crop, and I can either throw this layer away by clicking the trash can, or I can go make more adjustments. I'm going to tap on the sliders to make more adjustments, and in order to get rid of these so they're not in our way, I'm going to tap on the screen and they just slide out of the way. And now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to grab this bottom edge of my image and I'm going to slide it up a tiny, tiny bit. And I think that's going to be enough to get rid of that corner and that little spot. Now it's starting to take us into kind of cut off the button on the shirt here, which I was trying to keep, but I think I'm going to have to just compromise and leave that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark. And now there's our crop. I'm going to go back. So I got rid of the stuff on the bottom here, that little corner. We could have used a healing brush to take that out too, but I'm quite okay with the way this is. So now I'm going to hit the arrow in the upper left and go back to our home screen. So there's our image. I'm going to press on the screen, and there's before. Look at how cluttered the image is. And now there's our crop. It's a much more intimate crop and really focuses on what the subject of the photo is. So now I'm going to go through with my regular processing of this image. Now, because I zoomed in when I took this picture and I have so much grain in the image, I may not opt to do many of the things that I normally do with a picture, like sharpen it and so on. So let's just take a look, or what changes that I usually make I might do to a lesser degree, because I don't want to accentuate all that noise. So let's go down here to the pencil, and I'm going to start where I always do with Tune Image, and then I go down to Ambiance, which is where I always start, and it comes in at 0, and I'm going to just take my finger. If I slide to the left, I get one effect, which isn't bad. If I slide to the right, I start to build things up. So I'm noticing as I go to the left here, I'm kind of liking what happens. This is one option that we could do. This isn't the direction I was planning to go here, but as I look at this, it's darkening this area over here, which I don't want to accentuate, and it's also bringing in a little bit of darkness here, but it's leaving the main part of the subject of the image just fine. So this is an option here, is to take your ambiance into the negative. But I'm going to go back and go the direction that I was planning to go here. So as I bring my ambiance up a little bit, I'm probably not, if I go all the way, which is where I often go with a strong image, it's way too much processing. So I'm going to back this off, and I'm looking again for a place that's kind of a nice balance of color and detail. Probably not very far, maybe right about there. Then I'm going to slide down to my highlights, and again, the highlights is like a brightness slider for just the bright spots in the image. So the bright spots in this image are right up here in my dad's hair, the faces, the hands, the card, maybe some of these white strips. So if we take our finger across to the right and increase the highlights up to 100, you can see we've blown out that there's no detail now up here. We've lost detail in the skin tones and the card. It's just too much. So I'm going to take it back to 0, and then if I start to drop it into the negative numbers just a little bit, I'm watching mostly the areas of the hair, and you can see these white spots starting to get a little bit more detail in those areas that are white. So we don't need to go too far, but maybe on this one, maybe about into the maybe into the negative just a little bit. And this again, if you remember, we worked on this highlight adjuster when you're doing clouds in a landscape, and it's remarkable as you take it into the negative, those clouds begin to come alive. The same is kind of happening here in a more subtle way with my dad's hair. So the next thing I want to do then is go down to shadows. Now again, shadows is a brightness slider for the darker areas in the image. So in here we've got these dark shadows in the jacket. We've got the darkness over here in the corner. Now if I take and increase the brightness of those shadows by sliding to the right, look what's happening back here. I'm bringing out the detail of this, but I don't want to do that because that's not the subject of my picture. I want people looking here, not back here. So I'm going to take this back down to 0, and I'm even going to take my shadows a little bit further. Look how I'm darkening that corner a little bit. I don't want to draw attention to that corner. So our eyes go to the sharpest and the brightest areas. I'm trying to tone that down a little bit. And in so doing, I'm kind of toning down some of the shadows in the jacket that my dad's wearing. I think it gives it a little bit more depth and tone, but it doesn't take much. In this case, I'm only going down about 12. So the next thing I'm going to do is slide down to warmth. Now this is already a fairly warm or yellow image, but if I wanted to increase that a little bit, I could go to the right just a little and kind of increase. So there's before that adjustment, and there's after. Just a little bit warmer, and I like that for this image. It suits the mood of the image, I think. So that's it on the tune images. Yeah, excuse me, the tune image adjustment. I'm going to click my check mark in the bottom corner, and we're back to the home screen, and there's our changes. So here's before, and here's after. And again, to get that before and after, all I'm doing is putting my finger right here in this area on the screen and holding it down. So there's before, and there's after. And because we're on the home page, when we do the before and after, we're seeing the very beginning image with the latest image. If we go into any of the tools, like let's just do that for a quick second. I'm sorry. I'm going to go into one of the tool packages. So let's say, let's go into, oh gosh, I don't know what, let's go into vignette for a minute. So vignette allows you to add a dark vignette or light vignette around the image. So I've chosen vignette. I've got this dot in the middle if I wanted to use this. If I slide up and down on the screen, I have two things I can adjust. The brightness, outer brightness, which is outside that ring, and the inner brightness, which is inside the ring. So if I were to take this and slide my outer brightness down a little bit, I can really darken that circle. But now we are right now in the vignette tool. So if I now press my finger on the screen to show before and after, there's before and there's after. You notice it's only showing the before and after for the adjustments that we're doing in the vignette tool. And that's true whether you're in the Tune Image tool or the sharpening tool or any of those. When you're in the toolbox itself and you press down to see before and after, you just see those changes that are affected by the toolbox. I'm not going to keep those changes, so I'm going to click the X, and it takes us back out here. I'm going to click on the arrow in the left, and it takes us here. Now we're at the home page, and when I do a before and after by pressing on the screen, there's the original image, and there's all the changes we've made today. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. It's a nice tool for helping you see where you're going and fine-tuning each of the things that you're doing in the image. So the last thing that I would normally do on this is a tune image. I'm sorry. And tonal contrast is the one that I use quite a bit on landscapes and other things. I can tell already when I bring this in, it comes in at these 30, 50, 30 settings, and there's the before and there's the after, and I don't like the after. I can tell already I'm not going to use that adjustment. I'm going to go down to the X and get rid of it. So we're not going to do any more. We're going to stop right here on this image, and I'm going to go ahead and click the Save button at the top, and I'm going to save a copy. And again, by saving a copy, it's putting a new image in the camera roll. The old image remains the same. And let's just go look at this. The new image that's been saved to the camera roll, if we were to reopen this image in Snapseed, it would have all those stacks that we just created so that we could continue editing. So now here's our image. I really like the crop. What the heck, did I crop his hair? No, it's just the way it's not showing us the right crop on here. If I turn this sideways, we'll see better. I thought for a minute I cropped into his head here, but I didn't. It's just the side view, which allows us to see bigger, is showing it cropped off at the top a little bit. So now the next thing I want to do with this, I want to take it into Old Photo Pro and give it a vintage look. So for that, Old Photo Pro, swipe down to get our search icon, and I'm going to type old, and all I do is hit 0 or hit OL, and it pops right up. We've used this app before. It's the one that gives us that kind of what I think is a really cool vintage scene look. I'm going to load the photo, go to the camera roll, and I'm going to grab this image that we just processed in Snapseed. And there it pops it right up, and I just love it. It gives it some warmth. It gives it the vintage look. It pops it in here with these edges on it and scratches, which you may find attractive for certain images. I know I do for some. But you can take those out too and change them if you want. So I'm going to go into the edit mode here. And when I do, it brings us to the sliders. And the first thing I do is go down here to the set of adjustments at the bottom. You can change from a sepia tone, which is what we're in now, to a cyanotype. So if I tap on cyanotype, it turns it to a blue image. Not suitable for this particular subject matter, but it might be for something else you do. I'm going to go back to sepia tone. And then below down here, you see there's papers and edges. And if I tap on that, this is where I can either change the edge that's there, remove it. I can change or remove the scratches that are on the image. So the first thing, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those for this image, but you may want to keep them for some things. So I'm going to tap on no edges. You notice it just cleaned up those edges. And then I'm going to go up here and click no scratches. Now, the other thing that we can do here, there's a disable halo button down here. In the halo, they're basically talking about a vignette. But watch the image when I tap that. Notice there it is without the vignette or halo, and there it is with the halo. So I'm going to turn that off because I want everything to go out to the full frame, and I don't want that there. So now I could say OK, and it would take me back to the very home screen of the Old Photo Pro, but I'm going to say back instead. Because, excuse me, I want to go back to this color intensity. This is a slider I love because when I bring this to the right, watch what happens to our color. It's just brought this color back. So I just love that ability to tone that color down to a muted tone, and I just think it's a really nice vintage look. I'm going to go to maybe about there. Again, you're going to have a different place on that continuum that you like, but that's where I'm going to choose. And then tap OK. And now there's my image. So again, it's got a real nice softness to it. It's got a little bit of color from the color here and in the background. And I really like the way it's starting to look. So now I'm going to go ahead and save it. And you notice again we've got two options, low or high. I always choose high. And with Old Photo Pro, high isn't that high. Compared to other apps, it's a pretty low resolution save. That's just a characteristic of this app. That's okay. So now if we go and look at the final result in our camera roll, there's the new image. And we're starting to get closer to what I'm looking for. So now, the next thing I want to do with this, I want to go into Portrait Painter. This is another app that we looked at last week. I'm going to type it in, PO, and it just pops right up. And that's what it looks like. Actually, I was in here earlier, so I'm going to go get the photo we want to work with by tapping the Get Photo icon, and I'm going to load the photo. And if this interface looks familiar, it's because this is another one of those, it's a Jixi Pix company app, They make vintage scene also, which we've used in the previous session. So I'm going to go down here and get this image. And so the interfaces are almost identical in most of the JixiePix apps. This is also, the JixiePix apps also work on Android phones, so in addition to the iPhone. So it's one set of apps that you can share with your friends who use Androids. So it comes in, and you can see, if I expand it, you can see it's given it kind of some painterly looks and so on. I'm going to go in here to the star, and down below here are all the different presets that you can choose for this app. Now, of all of the apps out there, of the vintage or the JixiePix apps, for some reason these presets are just not that great. I usually end up going with one of these two right here, and then I just really make my own adjustments throughout. So there's, when I select this, you can see the texture in there from either a canvas or a linen setting that we're going to adjust. And then you can see the tone has gotten more yellow, and it's almost turned the image into almost a cartoon. But that's okay. And so the next thing we're going to do is go down to these sliders here with the bullet points. I'm going to tap on that, and now you notice that we've got three adjustments we can make. One is vibrancy. We can smooth out the image, what they call it, smoothing the skin of the image, or we can enhance the color. The color already, it's way over enhanced for what I want anyway, so I'm going to back the vibrancy off. If we smooth the skin to the maximum, it begins to get more cartoonish. I don't want that. I'm going to back the smoothing of the skin way down to nothing. The color enhance, if I bring it up, look, it's already very yellowish orange. I don't want that. I'm going to bring it back down into the lower realms. So I want to maintain that sepia tone coloring without a lot of garishness to it. So now I'm going to go to the next set of icons here, which is the paintbrush. And here we can adjust the stroke length and the paintbrush size, because this is essentially a painting that we're working with now. The brush size, watch what happens when I increase the size of the brush. We start to get that's interesting. Not seeing it so much. Usually you can see the brush strokes. You may see it on the next one. If we back the brush stroke length down, there it is a little bit. It's not changing a whole great deal. So let's go on to the next set of adjusters over here. And here's where we can adjust the bristle strength of our brush. So let's zoom in on this. And I'm going to increase the bristle. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I turned all that off. Excuse me. So I'm going to, you can see now the brush stroke in there. I'm going to back that off, and you can see it kind of tones it down. The other thing we have here is we can choose a canvas or a linen. So a canvas, if we tap on the canvas side, it's going to give us this much coarser canvas backing, whereas a linen is a little bit more subtle. Then we can also take the slider and tone it down even further by reducing the slider. See how much smoother it got as I brought the slider down. So you can increase the bristle strength a little bit. So I'm going to go back here and see if we can start to see a little bit of that. It's just not really doing a whole lot with that. But so now here's our image. I'm going to take the brush stroke down and the brush size down. And I want to go back and see if I've left anything. Yeah, I haven't done anything to it. It's still a little more orange, at least on my phone it is. On the screen up here that we're looking at, it looks a little bit less orange. But we're ready to save this now. I'm going to tap the home icon. And now we have these options down here. And I'm going to click Save. And when I click Save, here's the button to save it to our camera roll. If I wanted, however, to save this collection of changes that we just made so I can use them again, I can tap the Save Preset, and it asks me to name this collection of edits. So I just give it a name, whatever I want to call it, and I say OK. And now, the next time I bring an image in here and I want to choose a preset for it, I can go down here to the star, and I can look around down here, and there is the one I just did called name. And so I could apply that to it. So I've just essentially, I'd hit the button, so I applied those changes, reapplied them. So I'm going to go back now to the home button, and I'm going to click on the save icon, and I'm going to save this to our camera roll. And there we go. So let's go out and take a look at this now, and let's see. There we go. So here it is. Here's our image. Now, after it's been in Portrait Painter, and you can see that there's a little bit of canvas texture and there's a cartoonish look to the image, which I like, but it's too much. It's typical of what happens with coming right out of these apps sometimes. The processing it's garish. It's too intense. I like it, but I need to calibrate it a little bit or tone it down. So to do that, I'm going to go to Image Blender. And I'm back to my search icon, but again, I don't need to type anything in, because if I go over here, there's Image Blender because I just used it. I'm going to tap on that, and I'm going to click on the left, remove what's in there, because that's what I worked on before. I'm going to tap on the left image down here and go out to my library and get this last picture. Actually, on the left, I'm going to pick the image that came out of Snapseed before we took it into Old Photo Pro and Portrait Painter. So I want this version over here on the left in the corner. I'm going to tap that, and so I want this image. This is the one that came out of Snapseed. Then I'm going to go over and tap on the other side, go to the library, and this time I'm going to get the image that we just took out of Portrait Painter. So now, here I've got this. If I slide all the way, the little slider on the bottom, if I slide it all the way to the left, there's the whole image on the left, and if I slide it all the way to the right, there's the whole image out of Portrait Painter. Sorry. So now, if I take this and slide it back, I can begin to look for a place where I can live with that effect and get it just right. I love how it kind of does soften things. It does make it a little bit cartoonish, but to me, it's more of a memory as much as anything. It's just I love what it does to the effect and the tone of the overall image. So this is just some of what you can do with this app. I use it all the time. Many of the apps that we use that provide a painterly effect or a filter or whatever, they come right out of that app and they're too much. But by blending them together here, you can mitigate the intensity of it by doing it this way. Now, the other options that you have, if I take my finger on the screen and slide up, I bring up all the blend modes. And again, these are standard blend modes that you find in Photoshop and any other image tool that does blending. And it's just defining, as I tap on these, you can see how they change. It defines how the two images are digitally blended together. And you can see each one is different. You may find certain favorites. I often like soft light, but you can then, once you choose one of those, you can also continue to slide and see how that slide affects this particular image. So you got lots of options. For this one, I'm going to stick with our normal option over here, and I'm going to play with the slider, and I may bring it kind of into that realm right there. And I really like that. I'm going to go ahead and save it out to my camera roll. So let's go take a look at it. And again, there's so many different ways that results that you can achieve with this. There's the one that we just got. Now here it is right out of Portrait Painter. There's what it looked like out of Old Photo Pro. We've added the painting, and then we've blended it together. So we've got several different options here. You may decide that one of those others is where you would stop, and that's fine. This is all about creating a work of art that has your own signature on it, if you will. So, speaking of signature, in the past couple of sessions, we've gone in. I've used a watermark that I had created for myself by a company called Photo Logo, and I've shared that with you in the past. You can have them create a logo for you, and that's all great, and it's fun to put in there, and I do it with Image Blender. But is another good way to do this that I want to show you, and you don't have to go to the expense of having a a special thing made for you. So to do it, I'm going to go ahead and put a signature on this. The app that I use is one called Impression. It looks like this. It's a water drop, and there's no S on it, so you'll find all kinds of impressions out in the App Store, but the one you want is the one that looks like this. And this was not on your list, by the way, but I will send this to you in a follow-up message after our session. I'm going to tap on Impression, and when I come in, you have this camera down here. I'm going to tap on that, and I'm going to go to the camera roll, and I'm going to get our image. And now, you may not notice it because you can't really see it, but if I slide this down, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, it's dark, but there's my signature, it's black. I'm going to change it to white by tapping on the sliders on the bottom, and I can change it to white by sliding these opacity sliders. And so now, if I close it up, I'm just using my finger to position it. If I move it over here on the black, you'll see it better. But you can move it down to wherever you want on the image. You can take your fingers and make it smaller by pinching. And then if you, like when I use it, I always like to make it very subtle. So that's at the maximum intensity. If I go down here to the sliders, I can take these opacity sliders and I can slide it to the left, and I'm reducing the opacity. The other thing, and I just slid it back up, but you can also reduce the brightness of it. And the combination of opacity and brightness, you can take it down to where it's a very subtle watermark. And it just works really nicely. So how do you get your signature in there to begin with? Well, I'm going to tap on the words that appear here. And when I do, I just tapped on my signature. It brought up this, my keyboard. And you notice over here on the left is a copyright symbol. So I'm just going to I'm going to use take everything out of there, and I'm ready to put in my signature. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is tap this copyright symbol, and it pops it in over here. I'm going to hit the space bar, and I'm going to write my name, R-A-D, initial A, Drew. And now I have got my signature in there. So I'm going to say done, and there it is. It's in there. Now, what if I don't like that font? Well, if I come down here to the letters, I tap on the letters, you have all these different fonts to choose from. So you can change it to this one right here. It's very distinctive. And close. And now there's my signature. It's different. So you have all those different options that you can choose to create a watermark on your image. It's very simple. Every time you finish your image, you just bring it in as the last step into Impression, add your signature on there, and then save it. I'm going to go ahead and hit the save icon up here, and there we go. And I didn't finish that out the way I would have, but you get the idea. So let's go back and look at that in our camera roll. So there is our it's filling the screen if I turn it that way, but you get the idea. There's the signature in there. So just another way, very inexpensive way to add your watermark on your work as you post to Facebook, or Instagram or wherever. It's just kind of a fun way to identify your work. Okay, so how are we doing on time? Okay, we got 20 minutes left. So let's jump right into the next image. The one I want to work with. I want to talk a little bit about Tiny Planet. I don't know, maybe some of you have used Tiny Planet before and you know what it can do. I want to just show you quickly a couple of things. This is an image that I took of a church out in the Palouse last year. It's a weird kind of church. I love it, but it's in the middle of the parking lot. This is all pavement around it. It's kind of odd. And so I created this using some sketch tools in Light, which is an app we've used in the past. But now I want to take this and I run it through Tiny Planet, and look what I get. Isn't that wild? it turns the whole thing into this little tiny planet here, and anything sticking up on the landscape gets turned into this kind of thing. Now I added the texture and the color and played around with it, but you get the idea. So what we're going to do is take another image that I did. This is an image of a barn here in my, not far from where I live, beautiful old barn and farmyard. I love the road going up, and this is a panorama. It was taken with the iPhone resident camera, or the native camera, that comes with your phone. It's not a special app. It's a great. The panorama tool is awesome in the native camera, and so I find that the Tiny Planet feature really works well with panoramas. So this came right out of the camera, and then I've already taken this into Snapseed. I've already done the process that we've worked through so many times where I clean it up, I do ambient contrast. So this has already had all that done to it. Now I'm ready to take it and make a tiny planet. So I'm going to go out to Tiny Planet, and I'll type in T, and that's all I have to type, and there it comes up. And there's my tiny planet. And look what's happening as I tap on the Tiny Planet icon, and look, it turns it into this just really cool, image. Now, once you get your tiny planet created, the other thing you can do is do an inverse of that. They call it the rabbit hole. So I'm going to go down and tap on the rabbit hole and tap on that one, and it turns everything inside. So depending on what you're working with, you can get different effects, with different images. So try them both. I'm going to go back to the tiny planet, and once you've created your tiny planet, then you can make adjustments to it, and each of these things right here will allow you to make different adjustments. This works with your edge blur. So let's see. We go all the way to 20%, and then back. Let me see which is. I'm not sure which this one is doing. Okay, so see this. I think this is the seam. See where the seam is here? If I take it over to the other extreme, now our seam is softer, and so it's just a tool to work on the seam. And you see the percentage things here. I can bring this back and reset it to 0 by sliding the scale back to the beginning. There's no reset. You just have to bring it back. So there's where it started. This next icon, I can tap here, and I can use the scale. And look, what I'm doing is adjusting where that seam comes together. I don't usually mess with this one too much. If we just leave it at 0, that's fine. This one, though, I can then I can twirl it differently. So maybe I want to have more of that kind of effect to where the planet is kind of bigger and the things around it are smaller, or I can go the other way where the planet gets smaller and the things on the planet get bigger. Again, I'm going to just kind of leave it there. Then the last two over here, this one allows you to spin it around to different angles, and this last one allows you to zoom in on it. So if you really want to get tight, you can do that, or if you want to back way out and have it distant. So these are some of the things you can do with this. This is pretty much everything that the Tiny Planet app will do. It was the first of its kind that came out. It's been around a long time, and it hasn't evolved a whole lot. But I wanted to show it to you, but I'm gonna get out of this now. I'm going to show you a different app that does some of the same things, but more, and it's a much more sophisticated tool. It was not on your list, so you haven't heard of it before probably, unless you already knew about it. You didn't hear about it from me yet. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to go back out. Excuse me. This app is called Tiny Planet. I'm sorry, not Tiny Planet. That's where we just were. It's called Circular, CI. There it is. It looks like this, green icon. And I'm going to tap that and open it up. And oops. There's what it looks like when you first come in. There's the new button, and I'm going to tap on that. I'm going to go out to our photo library. And I want to go down to this one, and this is our icon. So this is our image right here. And you can do some other things to it. You can level it and do some stuff, but we're not going to make any changes. We're just going to leave it like it is. I'm going to hit the Done button. And when I do, it brings it in, and it automatically swirls it into a tiny planet. And that's what it looks like in this particular app. Now, here's where the fun begins. Down here, you've got a lot of different options that you can work with. If I start by clicking the Image Edit button, I'm going to tap Image Edit, and I've got all these different sliders that I can move. I can, on the left over here, I can zoom in by sliding up and down, and you can choose kind of where you want that to be. I can also rotate with the slider on the second one over. I can invert it. So the rabbit hole on the other one, if I tap right here on the invert button, look, it's turned it around inside and out. So now I can spin it, I can enlarge it, and so on in the rabbit hole version. There's their barn, maybe right side up. So you get the idea. I'm going to switch it back to this version because that's the one I want to work with for today. So now you can explore some of these other things. You're going to flip things around and do all that. But here's where it gets cool. Look at these effects down here. I'm going to go down and tap on. You've got effects that you can add. You can edit those effects. You can create multiple layers, sort of like in Snapseed where we're doing different things and stacking layers up. Well, you can do that in here too, and you can add one effect on one layer and another effect on top of that. And then you have filters that you can lay on like textures and other things to give it a different look. So let's go to Effects. I'm going to tap on Effects, and I'm going to go over here to Sky Objects. You've got all the different effects. You've got centers and clouds and lens flares. But I'm going to go to Sky Objects. And all of these things are things you can put in the sky. Well, I'm going to choose, I like this Earth Shine thing right here. Wait, is that Earth Shine? I want the moon. That's the Earth. Is that the Earth? I'm going to choose that. I don't know if that's the Earth or the moon. But look, there it is. It's put it up a moon in there, and now I can take my two fingers and I can make it larger, or in this case, I want to make it much smaller. Maybe position it up in there somewhere. So now I've got my barn with the moon in there, and I'm going to go to the Effect Edit, and now I'm in Edit of this effect. And I can change the brightness of the moon by dialing it down with this slider here. I can change the color of it by moving around this slider. I want to keep it in the center. But you see the things that you can do. And I'm going to kind of leave it at its full intensity. And then if I want to reset what I just did, I would just tap Reset, and it puts it back to where it was in the beginning. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Again, whoops, I have to go back to Effects, no, Edit. I think I just deleted it by mistake. So let's go back to Effects. Let's look at my layer. Let's go to this layer. Oh, there it is. I just put it in the center. There, I moved it by mistake. So I'm going to make it a little smaller. Okay, so now I want to add another effect. To do that, I'm going to go down to where it says Layers down here on the bottom. I'm going to tap on Layers, and I'm going to add another layer. So here's the layer with the moon in it. We've got all these empty layers. I'm going to add a layer, and now I can choose something else to put on the second layer. Well, what do I want to put? I'm going to choose some birds. I'm going to take these birds, and look, there they are. And I can take my fingers and enlarge them. I can twist them with my two fingers on the screen. I'm just kind of rotating them, and so on. So you can kind of do what you want with them. Then, let's see, then I could go to Effects. I can change their color, not too much, I guess. So then let's go to Filters. And so this is the Filters icon, and now I have the option to I can add different textures or different tones to this by tapping these icons. I can choose to add a texture. So if I tap over here on the textures button, I have all these different textures that I can add. Look, there's one that kind of gives it a really, really grainy effect, which almost makes it look, whoops, now I'm playing with that, almost makes it look like it's stars in the sky, and I kind of like that. So I'm going to go back to my filters. I can intensify or de-intensify that with the slider. If I don't like that particular tone, I can change it to something else. You get so many different options. And then if I tap on this icon right here, this is a vignette type of icon. So if I slide now, look, I'm closing in and kind of creating a vignette around there. So now I want to do another layer. I'm going to tap on the layer icon, and I'm going to choose another layer here where it says empty. And this time I'm going to go to clouds. And I'm going to tap on clouds, and look, you've got all of these different kind of, some of them are kind of crazy, but let's just look at a few. Here's one right here is a cloud ring. They're called cloud rings. So there's one kind of cloud ring that puts clouds around like that. That's pretty cool, actually. I kind of like that. But let's look at some of the others. So there's also another one over here. I kind of like that one too. And oops, and there's another one. Let's just pick that one. I like that one, and you can pick any one you want, but I'm going to go to Effects now, I'm sorry, to Edit now, and I can begin to dial down the intensity of those clouds in different ways. I can modify the color over here, so I can do something really fantastical if I want, or subtle with bringing it toward the center. It kind of lightens the tone. And then over here I can intensify with the slider. If I want to flip the clouds, I would flip on the y-axis, and I just turn the clouds over. So let's say I've done that, and now the moon now isn't where I want it to be. Well, I would go back to my layers icon down here, tap on it, and I would come over to tap on the layer that has the moon in it, tap on it, and then I can reposition with my finger the moon into another spot. Maybe I want to bring it down, closer to the barn. So you get the idea. So it's just so much fun. You got all these different options that you can do. And then when you're ready, you click on the share or the save icon at the top, and you save it to your camera roll. So these are some of the other apps that are made by this company called Brain Fever. Lens Light is really fun. Alien Sky has all kinds of like planets and starbursts and things like that you can add. So it's just you can see I've purchased these two already. I have not purchased Lens FX or Reflex. So these are called in-app purchases. If I click on these, they would take me out to the App Store, and I could buy them. I don't know, they're usually $1 or $2 at the most. So I've saved this. I click in the save icon here. I think I saved it. Yeah. And now let's go out and look in the camera. I think I saved it a couple times. So go back out to the camera roll. Where are you? Wrong folder. Let's see. Go back up to here. So here's what we just saved. So there's our fantastical image. Now, if we wanted, we could continue to edit that in other apps. So, for example, it's a little intense for me, a little too much blue. So what I could do is go out to that app that we've used in the past called Formulas. Looks like this. Excuse me. Looks like this one right here. And this is the one that we've talked about being a companion to Stackables, where you can create formulas. And this app has the formulas in it. I'm going to tap on the picture icon here, go to the camera roll, and get the image. And I don't want to change anything here with aspect ratio. I'm going to click the check mark, and now I can begin to lay on different filters. So there's one, and you can tone them down by sliding down across the bottom. And again, I know I'm going quick here. We've worked with these before, but so now we're suddenly kind of changing the whole tone of that image. And you can play around with these different. I'm scrolling all the way to the end here. This is one I often like, called tintype, and it just it just adds a blur to the edges. You suddenly got this kind of, I don't know, dark and stormy night look to your image with the birds and all of that. So you can apply this to so many different kinds of images, and you can come up with just a zillion different outcomes that are truly fascinating and unique. So I think that's probably a good place to stop for today. I'm going to go ahead and I'll save this, and just to remind you how we save. Hit the check mark here, and then the save icon in Formulas saves this out to camera roll. Let's go take a look at that just to make sure it's looking the way we want. Yeah, so there's that final image that we did in Formulas. So again, Tiny Planet, really fun. Circular does the same thing, but much more. You can do so many more things with it. So I'll send you a link, a note about the new app that I mentioned called Impression for adding your signature, and I'll send you information about the circular app that we added to our discussion today that wasn't in your pre-email information. I think that's a good place for us to stop. So if I go back out here to pull up my screen again. Let's see. There we go. Go ahead and put this out of the way. So I know in past sessions I've taken you out to my website and showing you some things there. I'm not going to do that again today, but please go visit and see if there's anything out there that might interest you. I leave for Cuba on Sunday, and I'll be there until the 6th of February. I'm going to be going again in November. I take a small group, no more than 8, and it's already half full, and I'm sure it's going to fill up. If you're any interested in joining us, I encourage you to take a look at that. You'll notice that the pricing on the website, I haven't kept up with some of the changes that have happened in traveling to Cuba. This trip will be the first one that we're able to fly on an American airline to Havana instead of having a charter out of Miami. So the website doesn't reflect that. The cost of the trip will be a little bit less than what's shown on there. But if you're at all interested, send me a note, and I'll share with you the information on how to claim a spot with a deposit, and take a look at some of the other things we have going on out there. My partner Sally Wolf and I are going to be leading a photo tour to abandoned Gary, Indiana here in the next couple of weeks, or months rather, and we're going to do that in April. More information on that will be released on Saturday. And then there are just a host of other things. Sally and I, Sally's on the call right now. She's part of the group that you're in, and Sally and I do a lot of workshops together, and we're going to be doing the Palouse in the fall, and then we are currently working on some other workshops for the Midwest, Ohio and Indiana, barns, covered bridges. So we'll keep all that stuff out there. If you haven't already, consider joining my my newsletter. I send one out about once a month, and I try and have links to things and things that are going on. So thanks again for joining in today. We have one more session after I get back from Cuba, and then we have a session on kind of an extra bonus session. And then I also promised that I would create a recording for everyone, kind of an extra session that I'll record and share a link with you on, kind of to make up for the problems that we had in webinar 2 where we had sound issues. So look for that, and if you have any questions about today or what you see when you look at the recording, give me a call and or send me a note, and we'll talk. But just remember, I'll be out of the country until the 7th of February. So until then, have a great time. Keep on shooting.